Hi everybody, John Michalski again from Great Swamp Bonsai Society, and what I'm going to do here briefly is a demonstration on how you get started with a piece of nursery material. So we have a Juniper procumbens nana. It's a typical beginner's demo workshop kind of tree. I guess it's what they'd call a 2-gallon or a 3-gallon. A tree cost me about $15. At the end of the year when they're trying to clear stuff out, it probably was a $30 plant once. So when we do these demos, we start with this quite large mass of foliage and we work it way down till we have the framework for what the bonsai will be in the future. And what I find is a lot of beginners are utterly stumped, if you'll pardon the expression, as to how to get started. There's all this massive stuff in here. And in this demo, I'm going to try to give you an idea of how we get started. So, instead of trying to look through all of this and trying to determine immediately what sort of bonsai we're going to be working with, we'll get to that eventually. There's so much stuff in a tree like this that beginners usually really can't even imagine. They watch the artist cut away 3/4 of the foliage, but how do you decide? The first thing I do is I get rid of anything that's already dead, because there's no question that it's not going to be part of the tree. And so clearing out all of this will give us a little bit of air to look through at what's left. Among other things, this action allows you to really see more of the tree that you've picked out. And by just getting the needle duff and stuff away from the base of the pot, I'm trying to avoid these shots where the camera goes blurry because it doesn't like that kind of close-up. I can see this tree has a much bigger trunk down the bottom than was evident when it was just out there on the shelf with all the others. So I'm going to keep doing these jump cuts because we need to keep YouTube videos to a certain length. So I'm going to clear this out more and come back to you. As you do this, you will probably come across many, many very thin, wiry branches coming out low on the trunk. Now, experienced bonsai people know this right away, but beginners often don't. There's almost no hope that you're going to use these thin, wiry things near the bottom. What you're going to have to look for is our first and second and third main branches along the way. So a lot of these very thin ones can just come out right away. You just literally go in and snip them out. Okay, and in the process, you'll be amazed at how much foliage comes off this thing and how much air there is around it. So that'll be our next look. Now, as I continue working, I'm even seeing some fairly large, these are almost pencil thick branches here on the left of the trunk. And but they're very low down and they're very long without any branching. Those are going to come out, and huge amounts of foliage are going to come off this plant in the process. I guess one of the things I'm saying here in this demonstration is that the beginner with a nice new fat little tree often doesn't know which branches to keep and which to prune. They don't know whether they should have the tree trending right or left or up or down or whatever. But if you just clear out the dead stuff and the needle duff and the long noodly branches that can't really be used, a lot of the decisions are being made for you in that point. Once you've cleared that out, you start to really have a clear image of what you could aesthetically do with the plant. And just removing those basic things will do a lot of it for you. Back in a moment. So now we can begin to get a real look at what this tree could give us. I know it's kind of dark in there. So big decisions now. There is a very, very long branch coming off right where my pinky is here, and it's long and it's never quite as thick as a pencil, and it curves all the way around, and a beginner would look at that and say, ooh, a cascade, but it's just this long, very long branch here. So I'm going to take that off, and that's going to be one of the options that I'm removing from my list. In the meantime, I want you to see this is the foliage that's been removed just by taking out the sort of hopelessly low and long and noodly branches. So we've already taken out about 1/5 of the foliage just by getting rid of the stuff that can't possibly be in the tree. Okay, I've just lifted the tree out of the pot, flipped the pot over, just to give you a much better view of what we're now up against. We've really got some great stuff here. All right, and so now I'm just looking at my options again. Now, what I see here is a long, thick branch, pretty much straight, thickness of my index finger. Not sure I can do anything great with that. All right? So there's still quite a tangle in here, and it's going to take me a moment to sort out what to do based on what it has the most potential for giving a pleasing thing. You see there's a long branch here that comes up here and suddenly goes up and gets very thick and strange. I don't know if I'm going to keep that either. So back in a moment with whatever I decide to do with this. So I think for a start, I'm going to take this long straight one here off back to about, I don't know, where that first robust side branch comes off, and maybe leave some stuff sticking out there to carve into dead wood, and then see what it looks like from there. Okay, so that branch is now off, and as we spin the tree around, we'll see that there are two trunks coming up here. One of them results in this long, narrow bit that then forks and does all kinds of interesting things up here. But when you've got a twin trunk possibility like this, and one of them is massive, if you're going to choose between the two, you're going to get rid of that smaller one. You're going to make the most use of this big colossal trunk, because that's what's going to give you the most bang for your buck in terms of an aesthetic image. Chances are this thin one's coming out. Well, I did take that one thing off, and wow, it really changed my options. Not sure I'm exactly glad I took that one. It's changed it a lot. However, I've done it. And what I now see is that perhaps my most interesting tree would be to follow this main trunk up, let it curve around like this, and then make this my tree up in here. That being the case, I will probably get rid of some of this other rather large stuff that I was pointing out earlier that comes up this way. Got to make decisions, back in a few. Okay, here's what I've come to. Whatever else is true about this tree, the overwhelming balance of the foliage is now coming off this one branch that goes up past my thumb and arcs up over into that arch you see right there. But for about, I don't know, a long distance, it's a long, straight, undifferentiated trunk. And I may revisit this before I cut, but I think that's just going from that thickness to that thickness and staying there for the next 10 inches is going to be a very unfulfilling bonsai design. I think this whole arched tree is coming off, leaving me with this as my tree over here. But back after I think about it. Well, I did it. I made that big cut, and now watch all of this comes off. This is easily about half the foliage on this tree. Now we have lost a gigantic amount of stuff, right? But look at what we have left in here. I mean, I think that's really, really compelling. When this hunk is gone here, or whittled down, you're going to have this tree that goes up and over and comes back around again and does this. I think this is really the tree in here. And I'll trim these other branches way back, and we'll be back in a half hour or something after I've worked it up. So I'm not going to try to demonstrate the whole technique, but these are two big branches that I've cut off. And what I'm doing to try to get the most aesthetic use out of them is it's a simple technique. You've blunt cut them, you peeled the bark off, you take a razor or something and cut right around the base so the bark doesn't keep stripping further back than you want. And then you just take your cutters, I'm sorry, things are blurry, take your cutters and you sort of nip in and peel backwards. And the wood peels in strips like this. I'm sorry, I have to do all this single-handed. I don't have any assistant. So the wood peels in strips like this. And you just patiently peel a strip at a time and you get quite a nice result. And we'll be back to this in a minute too. Okay, this is about only 15-20 minutes later. We now cleared out piles of stuff. This was that one big thick branch that I chopped off early and it took a lot of foliage out. I've cleared out most of the stuff that was distinctly dead and there was no sense in keeping. The trunk was growing quite a number of secondary rootlets that were, you know, if the duff had stayed piled up high, it would have just sent lots and lots of roots. And look at what we have. There's motorcycles. Look at what we have left. It's really quite an extraordinary trunk. Now, I think it bears emphasizing, I did not know this trunk was in here when I bought the tree. What I looked for was a thick base and a lot of healthy branches that would give me a lot of options. But this has become quite a remarkable tree. So I'm going to do some final pruning, and I really had to clear out quite a lot of baby roots coming out of here. There really was an awful lot that was obscuring the line. So clean it up, and what we will have is not a finished bonsai, but the bare bones of something I'm going to grow out for another year or two. And come back to that in a moment. Again, I want to emphasize that so far in this demonstration, every major pruning decision I've made has been based not on some deep projection of what this tree was going to be. So far, everything I've done has been based on what can't go into the final bonsai. Things that were too low on the trunk, things that were too long and skinny and unbranching, things that were dead, things that were conflicting or uninteresting. That's all I've done. I've been removing the stuff that you'd never bother to keep, no matter what you were going to do. But look what has emerged from this. All right, it's really amazing, isn't it? The tree has started defining itself strictly by a process of elimination. So you buy one of these, and look at how much foliage I've removed. All right. This, in my view, is a great way to get started. You buy yourself some good thick trunks, Juniper procumbens. Look for something basic inside of them that you think you can work with before you buy, and then you just start eliminating things. You'd be amazed at how the design starts to teach you. Okay, well, and this is not going to be a repotting demo, but I did want to show, in taking it out of that 3-gallon or 2-gallon pot, look how much soil has just fallen away from the root mass without me cutting a single thing. So if you're sheepish about repotting them, if you're new to this, you can really put it in a much smaller container with almost without cutting any roots at all. But I'll have no trouble trimming off the bottom half of these. The tree will have plenty of roots to get by on, especially as I've removed more than 3/4 of the foliage. This particular plant had an abundance of beautiful feeder roots all the way around it. I have not clipped a single root, and I could easily put this in a container only half the size of what it came into. But I'm gonna clip the bottom half of these roots off, and this will easily go into a I don't know, a slightly oversized bonsai container or any container you want. And there you have it, repotted. I've got to do this all single-handed, but there you go, repotted. I use a coarse mix now of pumice, akadama, and lava rock. The squirrels don't mess with it much, is one of the things I like about it. But anyway, there's our tree. I've overpotted it. I put it in a container almost twice the size of what it might eventually be in, because I just want to give it the summer to recover from the insults I've given it, and hopefully grow out a lot close to the trunk. But man, that's going to be a really interesting little tree someday. And it started out as that huge bush, that huge mass of foliage. And the point of the lesson is, most of the design decisions came as a result of simply getting rid of low branches, dead branches, and long skinny branches, and then seeing what was left.